All right, so we're going to move over to JMP very quickly. So this is a tutorial, and as I go, if I do something that you didn't catch and you want me to redo it, just let me know. Okay, it's very fluid, and we'll see how it goes. So 1 year ago, some of us were at Discovery 2013 down in San Antonio, Texas. And Thursday morning, I got a very unusual text from the school district saying that there was no school that day. Not because of snow, but because of rain. And many of you may know that we had quite the rain in Boulder. And this was what I saw as I returned to town on the van from the airport. And then along the road there is not a river. That is a bike path. And closer to my house, after the rain did stop and the sun came out, this again is a bike path. So I was thinking about what can I use for data to look at fit y by x. And so we're going to go over to JMP. And let's actually just get rid of PowerPoint altogether. And I pulled up historical rain data for Boulder. And so the first thing I'm going to show you in JMP is opening a data table that's not already a JMP data table. And of course, I end up in some totally random directory. So let's go over here. So this is a text file. And I don't want to open it as a text file, but I want to open it because if I do open it as a text file, it's going to dump it in. It's going to crash something, of course. You know. No, it opens it up as a text file in a script window. So that's not going to be terribly useful for what we want to do. So let's go back and do that again. Now this time it opened it in JMP, but as a text file. So again, that's not what I want to do. So let's go and open this one more time from my window, from my Finder, and say, I've got 4 options here, and I'm going to open it up using Preview so that we can look at what it looks like. So this gives you some options as far as whether you've got tab delimited, comma delimited, where the file starts. That's useful when you get those wonderful Excel files where people put 15 lines of headings, and then they put their data, so you can jump down to where the data is. This file is actually a fairly clean file, so I can just go ahead and say next. The other thing you can do here is you can change your column headings right here before you even put them in to JMP. And I think you can also, somewhere you can, maybe it was on the page before, you can sort of change your columns if they're not quite right. So we're going to import this data, and now we're in JMP. Okay. So this is data from Boulder, Colorado, starting in 1897 up through, 2014. May, when I pulled it down. And the only column I'm really going to concern myself right now with is some of the time and the precipitation column. And already we can see we've got issues in this data because we've got some no data codes in here. 999 and minus 998 are often missing data. So because we're not terribly concerned with the details here, I'm just going to get rid of this 998 number. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to right-click, and I'm going to select matching cells. Okay. And that's going to highlight all of these cells that have minus 998 in that column. And I'm just going to Control X them, and they're gone. And I've got my notes over here. So the next thing I'm going to do is go up through the fit y by x, which I have as an icon on my window, or it's under your Analyze fit y by x. And my precipitation is going to be my y, and I'm going to just go by year. And you look at that and you say, oh, crud. I've got some more garbage in my data. So not only did I have 998s in there, but I also had 999s in there. So I'm going to fix that. I'm just going to select a few of them in my graph. Actually, but before I go back to my table, slow down. I'm going to go to my red triangle, down under my script. Not all platforms have this, but many of them have this. There's this automatic recalc. I'm going to turn that on, because that's going to when I make a change in my data table, my plot's going to update without me having to go back and rerun it or launch it again. Okay, so now I've got these points highlighted. I don't see them in my table. It's a pretty big table. If I wanted to find one of these highlighted rows, I could go up here under rows and say, go to the next selected row. And that would pop me down here to row number 3,000 something. And there's one of those 999s that was causing me issues. Okay, so I've got them all selected. And I have 309 of the 999s. So again, I'm going to just Control X and get rid of them. So now they're just missing. And for what I'm doing, I don't care. I just wanted them out of there. Okay? So now, where was my chart? It's hidden back here. And for some reason, why didn't it? That is most strange. What did I do? I only selected, you're right, I only selected some of them. So let's go back here and go to the next selected and highlight that and do our select matching cells again. So now I get, instead of 300, I get 3,000 of them. Okay. So now let's kind of get that table where we can see it, and let's Control X them. Now we've got the updated. Now, let's make this big. So now, this kind of fits into our last talk, right? Here's one of these really, really strange, improbable, but probable, it happened, events, right? So this is 2013. I'm just hovering over this point here. And so right now it's telling me the year, but what I'd really like to know is what day was that? So I'm going to go back to my data table. I'm going to highlight my day, which is the day of the month, and I'm going to make that column a label. Okay. So now it's got this little yellow ticket next to it. That means it's a label. So now when I go over here and I hover on this point, I have the day, the year, and that precipitation amount. And JMP has this little thing here. You can actually pin that value to the data point if you so prefer. Okay. So that was September. Well, we can also add the month in here. We can do the same thing. And now let's turn that pin off and let's go back. And so now we can see that was September 12th of 2013. We had 9 inches of rain in one day. That's pretty unusual in Boulder, Colorado. As you can see, back in 1919, there was a day with 4.8 inches of rain, less than half. So what are some other things that we can do? I'm trying to remember everything. I'm going to do that in a second. So another thing that's really useful in JMP is you can see, well, there's a lot of data here. There's a lot of data with zeros because a lot of days we don't get rain. So you might want to filter your data. So again, under our red triangle, down here at the bottom, the script, we have, keep going down, there's something called the local data filter. Okay. So if I go to the local data filter, I can add in, let's filter on amounts of precipitation. Add that to my filter. I have this little slider now. We're running, there we fit now. So let's move and say, well, let's look at all of the days with, I don't know, what's your favorite number? Greater than an inch. And we start to see the unusualness of this number, right? Because before we started with 42,000 data points, right? And now we have 344 matching rows of data. Okay. What about 2 inches of rain? Now we're down to 49, right? Since, what was it, 1897? 49 days that you have more than 2 inches of rain. So you can see that a day with 9 inches of rain is pretty unusual. Okay. A couple other tricks before we move on. There's when you fit Y by X, if you fit this, you probably do this mostly in Graph Builder because there you can swap things back and forth really easily, but you can also do that in fit Y by X. I can swap my X and my Y. Now it resizes my graph and takes away my pin, but that's okay because you're usually doing that early in what you're messing with. So let's put that back over here. Another thing that's useful in larger data sets or where you have a number of factors, it's going to be kind of goofy in this data set, but we'll do it anyway, is down here, again, under our red triangle, down at the bottom, this script, just keep going to the very, very bottom, there's this thing called the column switcher. So let's pull that up. It says, all right, which column do you want to switch? Well, I'm going to switch my Y. So I'm going to say my preset. And it says, all right, what do you want to switch it to? Okay, I haven't cleaned up the other columns in this data set, so it's going to be ugly, but it doesn't matter. Let's switch it to snow and snow cover. Those columns still all have those 999s. All right. So you say, okay, well, it hasn't done anything, but over here it has snow. So now if I click on snow, I get snow amounts, right? It switched my precipitation out with snow. And I can click through. I only put 2 in here, but you can imagine when you're looking at your process data and you have time or something and you have a whole bunch of X's and you'd like to just step through them, this is a great way to step through and take a look at them. All right. So let's go back. Can we... I lost my precipitation, so let's close it. And let's redo it. Okay, whoops, stick that up there and here. Okay. So we had 9 inches in one day, but this rain event wasn't a one-day event. It pretty much started when I left for Discovery. Left at home, heard little bits and pieces about, yeah, it rained again today, yeah, it rained again today, and only to find out that it rained for many days. It was an 8-day rain event. There was one day in there where it didn't rain, the helicopters flew, and then it started raining again. So let's look at, let me do that again. So I added a new column, and the way I added that new column is I just double-clicked at the end of my data table up here. If you just double-click, you get a new column. Now, if you want to put a column in the middle of your data table, then you need to go, say, add multiple columns. Even if you only want to add one new column, if you want it in the middle of the data table, say add multiple columns, because then you can control where that new column gets inserted. Okay? And you can control at that point whether it's a numeric character or the funny row state, and soon we'll have other options there as well. All right, so I want to put a formula in here. And again, with columns, there is this column info, which has all sorts of numbers, all sorts of options in it. And we're going to use that in a bit, but I just want to put a formula in, and when I want to put a formula, I usually just right-click in the top of the column, because that takes me straight to the formula, rather than if you go column info, then you have to choose formula, and then you have to choose edit formula, so this is faster. So that brings up this wonderful formula box, which the more you use it, the easier it gets. So I want to look at 8 days of rain as opposed to 1 day of rain. So I'm going to put a formula in here. Let's see if I can remember. It's going to be a statistical formula only because I need the summation. This isn't a crazy statistical formula. And I want to sum up 8 rows at a time. So it's going to be a running average. So I'm going to start with I equals row number, which is up here, row. If I just say row, that's going to be like rows, row 1, row 2. Minus 8. And this, I want to be, now I'm blanking on my precipitation, and I need a subscript of I, right, because I want the precipitation from row I. And up to this, I want to be row. Let's see if this works. Okay. And so, this is 8 days. And let's see if that looks right. We have a lot of zeros because we have a lot of empty data. And you can see that it's adding up. Right, here was a period of lots of 0 and then a 0.06. And we're running out of time already. So that gives me my 8 days. So let's take a look at that. And we're going to filter really quick. And we'll filter on the year. And let's just get to the recent time frame. The 2000s, something like that. And you can again see how unusual. If I even make this, let's go 2010. These data points all come from 2000. This is that event in 2014, right? And overall, the 8 days, we had 17 inches of rain. Okay. All right. Now, I'm going to grab another data file. And I've got some rows colored, and I'm going to start out with them clear. So I'm going to clear my row states. And this was data from two gauges along streams. You know, we don't have super big rivers, but we have it's called the Boulder Creek. And we're going to put in the date and time and the gauge height. Okay. And I'm not super close to the creek, but my son's school is right along the creek, and I learned later that he was texting his dad, yeah, I'm on this side of the creek, so I can get home to feed the cats if there's a problem. That was the Wednesday. They both made it home, I made it home, but then no one went anywhere for a while. This is kind of a really cool feature. So this is, if we just hover over these, this is that Thursday night around 9 o'clock at night. How many of you have warning sirens in your towns that get tested every so often, right? It's Thursday, Friday at noon. This is a warning test. Well, at this time period, we heard the true sirens along the creek. It was really eerie because they weren't warnings. They were, get away from the creek because it's about ready to flood. So I've highlighted these points. And this, under the column, under the rows, I always have to stop and think, actually, no, it's even more hidden than that. Right click. Okay, I've got the rows highlighted. Right click and say name selection in column. And click on that. Right? So name your column, and this is creepy. And this is warning, and this is all clear. Now, in my data table, back here, I have a new column with these points were marked. And now I can go and say rows, color by, that new column we put in here. And all clear should not be red, so we're going to change that color to green. And the warning we can change to red and say OK. All right. So that is kind of a nifty trick. All right. Now, I probably have a couple more minutes, so let's get rid of this. Another feature that I've been using more and more recently is in the column info. If I have a brand new column, I'm going to add some rows to my table. I'm building simulated data here, and we'll go as far as we can. But when I put in a brand new column, if I right-click in this top part of the column or go to my column menu and bring up the column info, when the column is brand new, it'll have this initialize data feature, okay? And this is really nifty. So I'm going to call this subject ID. And what I want in there is just the numbers from 1 to 100, okay? And I say OK, and it populates. Now if I go back to this column info, that option's all gone because this column has had numbers put in it. It's been initialized. Okay, I can add another column, go to my column info, and remember here we had all sorts of options. I'm going to change this to a character, and I'm going to call this diagnosis, if I can spell, and I'm going to say sequence data, and I just learned this the other day that you can do this. I'm going to say positive, and add that, and I'm going to say negative. I'm going to add that. And I had 100 rows, so I'm going to put each of them in there 50 times. And boom. I have this column already filled in. All right. Let me see if I can do one more. This one, instead of doing that, I'm going to use a formula, and it's going to be based off the diagnosis. It's going to be, and I always have to look myself to find what I'm looking for, so don't feel bad when you're clicking through all of these. I'm going to say match and add match arguments from the data. So since I already put diagnosis in the formula, it will make the hard part of the formula for me. And then I'm going to add in here two random distributions. This one I'm going to make log normal, if I can find it, and a mean of 1.3. And notice that in this formula, there's this teeny tiny little caret down here. That means there's more options I can put in the formula. So if I click on this bigger caret in the formula box, if I have this highlighted and click there, it gives me additional items I can fill in. I'm going to do that. And this one, we're going to go random. We'll just stick our favorite random normal in there, and I'm putting in a standard deviation and a mean, and I'm going to say OK, and now I've got myself a data set. Okay. So if I do fit y by x on this type of data where x is categorical and y is numeric, I get this type of data point, 3 minutes. All right, what's the, trying to think of what's the one last thing we should do. Let's do logistic regression where my x is continuous and my y is categorical. And let's pull up a ROC curve and say positive. And wow, that's a pretty nice looking curve, but anyway. So sometimes you want to change the color of a curve in a jump plot, and you say, dang, how do I do that? It won't let me, everywhere I look, there's no option. Here I can make the line width bigger, but I can't change the color. Well, in jump, there's often a customize window. And you say, okay, well, how do I use this thing? I look and I say, okay, pen color 9. This script, I've looked at this a number of times, is this yellow line. So I don't like that yellow line. I have to explain it to people and they don't get it. It's not important. I can say apply. It goes away. This script in here was for this line. And I can say, okay, I really want it to be a different color. And since I went to Clemson and there's all these Wolfpack people here, will make it orange, and the line is orange. So that's in a number of places as well. And I think I'm probably out of time. 1 minute, so fire away.
If you have questions for Karen, we'd like to speak in the microphone so that no one can hear. Karen, thank you for covering the bases.
Yes. You have to push your button.
Need instructions. Very interesting talk, thank you. And one thing that I find myself doing is I'll find some points that are interesting, I'll color them differently, and then I'll want to go back sometime later and find those points. Is there an easy way in a table to find rows, for example, that have a certain color?
To find rows with a certain color, no, but you can if you think ahead of time, right? If you've colored these, and while they're colored, if you make a row state row, and now this color, you go under this funny star and you say copy from row state, that was weird. Add from row states. Why is it? Oh, sorry, it's right. They're black. They all looked red to me. Now they're there such that you could reapply them later. So now if I clear my row states, rows, clear, clear row states, and now an hour later you want to go back to that coloring you had before, you can say copy to row states, and it'll put it back. But to find them, yeah, I don't know how you can find on color. That would be nice.
Yeah, I have a question. Mm-hmm. Suppose you just want to create a table only with the positive.
Okay.
Like, how do you set up the filters?
So if I want to, like from this table, I want just the positives?
Correct.
So here, there's a couple of different ways. One, I used to always do distribution, and then you can figure out what you want to highlight, or you can do the select matching cells. And once those are selected, I can say table, subset, selected rows. Now, what people don't often notice is that you can also select on columns, so you can select all columns or just the columns that you have selected. But right now, I want just the selected rows. It'll take all my columns, and now I just have the positives.
Thank you.
Anything else? Yes?
Oh, okay, it does. In the very first example where you're showing the rain by month on the x-axis, how do you turn those numbers into actual months? Because I remember you were looking at, let's look at the most current, but it wouldn't show as a month. It would show like a numeric.
Yeah.
Is there a way to change that?
So, if it was a date, I could get it, if it had been imported as a date, there's formulas that from the date you can say the month. A way I could do it here is if I change this column to character, and then under column I could recode, and I could type all the months in. Does jump know 1, 2, 3? I don't know that it knows those are months.
If they're numeric, it treats them as months. They would have to be numeric.
Oh, so if I go back and make it numeric and change the format type to date.
No, if you left it just as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And it might know there are certain built-in ordering, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday.
Say ordering, but will it change the number to the actual day of the month word?
Not unless there is something in the formula editor that will.
Yeah. So one is to recode it, but now another thing that you could do is under column properties, here we go, we could use value labels. Okay, so now I can put in that 1 is January, 2 is February. All right, you get the idea. And you say use value labels, and you say okay, and now you can see my Januaries and Februaries have been labeled. They're still, I could still go back, the numbers are still there, but when I plot it, they should plot as the date, as the words. So you could do
Karen?
that, or you could recode it to make them permanent that way.
Hey, Karen.
Yes.
I just wanted to mention that Zan added a new date-time transform for Jump 12 to do the month abbrev, so.
So in 12, it'll get easier. Yeah, dates are kind of messy.
And
at
also
times.
Recode is better about the character to numeric switching in Jump 12.
Okay. Yeah, that's going to get better as well. Yay.
All right, I know you have lots of questions. That's great, but Karen, thank you.
Thank you.